I knew that I was called to minister in prisons or jails.
That was one of my questions that you kind of answered already. Is how did you know that you were called to be a jail chaplain?
Well, at that time, I was a layperson, so I really wasn't even looking at being called to be a chaplain.
But you knew you were going to serve prisoners.
I just knew I was called to go into prison. And it wasn't too long after that we had a speaker here at Christ Church, and it was a guy who came to talk to the congregation about an organization called Friends Outside. Friends Outside is an organization which began in California, and it became national when Nevada came on board. So he wanted to begin a chapter of Friends Outside in this area to serve those people who are incarcerated.
So you visit them and write them and call them and put money in their account and stuff like that.
Well, what happened is the whole idea is if you decided to be a chapter of Friends Outside, then you would identify what you believed was the biggest need in to address families of people incarcerated. Well, of course, I had no idea what that was, but I said to the man at that meeting, I said, well, how do you get involved with Friends Outside? And he said, just say you want to be involved with Friends Outside. And I said, well, I want to be involved with Friends Outside. So, and there were some other folks that were here with me. And so we decided that, yes, we'd like to be involved with Friends Outside, and we'd like to form a chapter. And so we decided at that time we would do that, and I was named the director. And so we got our heads together to find out what possibly was the need of all needs to address in this area. Well, there were so many needs because nothing was happening. But the biggest need was, at that time, we had one prison in southern Nevada, and it was about 25 miles outside of town, and there was absolutely no transportation.
So if you didn't own a car, you couldn't get there?
To the prison. And so we decided that probably the need of all needs at that time was to find a way to get the families out to the prison so they could visit their loved ones.
And you did that?
And we did that by asking the bishop of the Episcopal Church if we could use the church van.
Which he allowed.
And he said that we could because it was interesting. Bishop Friendstorff, Wesley Friendstorff was his name, and he was also very involved in prison ministry. And so, of course, that was that touched his heart. So we used the church van, and every Saturday we would take a van full of mothers and children, mostly,
wives,
out, mothers and wives and friends and children, out to the Jean prison. And while they were visiting, we would go inside the prison and we would walk the yard visiting with the inmates. We were very, very lucky because the warden of the prison was he was a wonderful man, and he really knew that one thing that would help families and prisoners were to have real connection and contact with their families.
It makes it more likely they're going to succeed when they get out.
Yes. So we were bringing that to him, and he just opened the door to us. And so we would visit with the people, and this was 33 years ago that all of this was happening.
So you had your conversion 3
Yes.
years approximately before your husband stopped drinking, is that right?
Yes.
Please tell us briefly about Family Promise.
Okay, Family Promise is is an organization that shelters families, homeless families. And Christ Church is one of 18 faith communities that
Are there
offers
so they're Christian? Are they Jewish and Muslim as
all
well?
faith, yes. Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Unitarians. We offer, as host sites, we offer space to house
How many
homeless
families? How many?
4 families
For how long?
for a week at a time.
And I was involved in a program like that in Los Angeles with our congregation, where I went to the congregation and to the campus, and I spent the night
Yes,
to make sure that they had what they needed and nothing
That's
bad
exactly
happened and
right.
like that.
yes.
And but the program, there was only 9 congregations involved in this program, but it was for 2 weeks at each congregation, and the idea was that during this time they could find work and then find permanent or semi-permanent housing,
Yes.
so that they don't go back out on the street.
Sounds like it sounds like
Similar.
it might have been called at that time, it was Interfaith Hospitality Network.
I don't know. It
But
was
it-
different.
But similar, and the host sites, the people are brought to the host sites about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Then our responsibility is to feed the people and provide hospitality for the
Shelter,
families.
showers.
And for shelter, and then after our supper, they make their lunches for the next day, and then they go to bed, and then the next morning they get up and they have their breakfast, and teams of volunteers come in to make sure that this all happens. We have an overnight person that stays just in case something, if something happened, we would be
Also
able
to help make sure nothing happens.
That's right. And then during the day, they go to a day site. And it's at the day site that they work at tapping into all of the social services that they need so that they can go to the next step, looking for jobs, looking for housing, putting their children in school. And they work with people at the day site to help them achieve this.
That sounds like a very
And it's-
worthwhile
And it's
project.
probably 75 to 80% of all of the families that are involved with Family Promise make it. And
Are there any organizations involved in Family Promise that are not faith-based? Like just a community group or something that's not a religion?
well, I don't think so. I
Okay.
don't think so. It is a faith-based organization.
Okay.
However, it's faith-based. It is not just Christian.
Right. Unitarians
Yeah.
are Christian-ish,
Yeah.
but the Jews and the Muslims are
Yes, and we all, it's just wonderful. It's interfaith. We all work together, and it's just, and it works.
not. Okay. Please tell us about Shade Tree.
Shade Tree. Shade Tree, again, some of us in this parish and a few people in a couple of other parishes here in Las Vegas, one particular All Saints, which is
Catholic.
No, All Saints is an Episcopal parish in northwest part of the valley. Anyway, we got together again. The bishop at that time was a man by the name of Stuart Zabriskie, and he gave us a challenge to identify a need in the community that the Episcopal Church could address. And so we got together, some of us who were interested, and we began to address, now what could we do to really make a difference? And there were so many needs again that we chose
It's hard to pick.
women and children because we decided that people would really be very sensitive to taking care of women and children.
You'd get more cooperation.
At that time, and this was in probably 1990, 1989, 1990, there was no shelter for women and children, with the exception of Salvation Army, and they only provided shelter for very, very few women.
And on an emergency basis.
And, yes, and so we decided that we would work at establishing an emergency women's and children's shelter that would be open 24/7 and be a place for women and children, women and children to come to be safe. And we began to work on that. We opened the Shade Tree at an Episcopal church in Lands, in just a small Episcopal church over on Eastern and Bonanza, St. Luke's, and we began to house these women in the basement of their church. And we opened on a Thanksgiving night. I'm going to say maybe 1989, and I might be wrong on that date. And we had 75 women
The first night.
on the first night
That's pretty big.
on pallets that we had secured from the Clark County Detention Center because they were going to throw them away, and blankets that they were going to throw away, and I had asked if we could use them. And so the women were brought over from an area where they all kind of congregated, and it's an area that's now called the Corridor, and it's an area where homeless people kind of congregate. And I would be willing to tell you there were about 75 women.
And are you still operating out of that same basement?
No, we're not. We moved from there to a property that was owned by Catholic Charities, which is right in the corridor, and we rehabbed an abandoned store, and we began to reach out to others in the community to help us rehab this store, and we rented the property from Catholic Charities, and then we began to rehabilitate it. We went to.
Did they give you preferential rent? Less than market?
Well, do you know, they had to charge us rent because it was a living trust, they said.
I understand.
And as I remember,
But
it was a lot of money, and we didn't have any money, but we really operated on faith and decided if this is what we're supposed to do, then we just guessed that it would happen. And so we went to the Junior League because the Junior League is very involved in social concerns in the community. And we made our spiel about what we were going to do. And one of the Junior Leaguers happened to be married to the general manager at the Palace Station on Sahara. So Teresa went home that night and said to her husband, you have to do something because we have to help. And the next morning, Joe sent over some people who worked at the Palace Station, and they began to help us fix this abandoned building. My husband will.
Are you still in that same place?
No, we are not.
So where are you now?
We stayed in that place for about 4 or 5 years, and then what happened is there was a grant. The board of directors at that time wrote a grant to Donald Reynolds Foundation, and Donald Reynolds Foundation built us a $1 million facility across the street. And now Shade Tree operates and houses more than 200 women and children.
200 people or 200
Yes.
women and the children that are associated?
Well, probably about 200 total people.
Okay.
And
And
in
how long is the
emergency-
program? How long do you do? So some woman walks in the door for the first time. How long can she expect to be there?
It's steps. What's happened now is there's an emergency shelter area, And then if someone really shows initiative and that they want to go on from there, there's transitional housing. So they move up to another floor, and then they began to work with them.
Is it required that they become Christian
No.
to avail themselves of your service?
No.
Please tell us about Parsons Place.
When we began Shade Tree, we immediately recognized that we were involved with a revolving door, and the women would come to us.
And then
in
3
an
months later,
emergency,
they'd be back.
and then there would be nowhere for them to go, so they just would stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to decide. So we decided we had to find another place. So we decided we would go into the transitional housing business, and at that time the buzzword was SROs, which is single room residency
Occupancy. Single resident occupancy.
My husband happened to have a client who bought this abandoned motel in downtown Las Vegas and knew that I was into this type of work and asked me if we would like to have the motel to do something with after he renovated it. And of course, we jumped at the chance, and it was a 57-room motel, and Joe went in and redid the motel, and then
All at his own expense.
all at his own expense, and then offered it to us. I think it was going to be $3,000 a month, which again we had no idea where we were going to get that.
Yeah, but 57 rooms, that's cheap.
However, we figured out that we could charge $200 a month and make the payment for $3,000. Again, we truly didn't know what we were doing, but I also believe that God uses people that really don't know what they're doing, and so again, it was really because God was running the show, and so we opened Parsons Place, and
Do you send women from Shade Tree to Parsons Place?
yes, we do. Parsons Place is an SRO for single men and women.
Okay, so there's like a men's floor and a
it's
women's
for-
floor like that.
It's for men and women coming out of jails and prisons and coming off the street, coming out of treatment centers.
No kids.
No kids. And it's located downtown Las Vegas on the corner of 7th and Stewart. And it's been in operation now since, I'm going to say, 1992. Sometimes all these dates kind of run together.
I understand. Days of the week run together, never mind years in my life. Please tell us about the Hunt Ridge Teen Clinic.
Hunt Ridge Teen Clinic again began here at Christ Church, and again
This one.
This is Christ Church Parish.
Oh, okay.
We're known as Christ Church Episcopal.
Okay.
And again, we got together and to decide what we could do to serve the people of Las Vegas.